Welcome to the Rex Andrews Show. Glad to have you with us. Glad you found us if you're a first-time listener. And a couple things for our first-time listeners. We always remind you, don't forget to subscribe no matter where you're listening. So if you find us on YouTube or any of the podcast platforms, all the social media, we're there. So subscribe so you get all the updates. Then number two, don't forget to stop by the show website because we have microbiographies on the show. We tell people stories, but we can't touch it all. So we have profiles of all of our guests that have ever come on, and then the current ones, and everybody in the queue coming up. And we generally have about 60 people in line to get interviews. And so we have interesting people. So stop by and do that. And then one last thing, okay? I'm not bashful. I will beg. I really will beg. And today I've got a caller on, so I'll call myself a well-dressed beggar. And if you like the show, I'm going to beg you to please give us the 5 stars because it helps us in the placement in the app distributions for podcasts. So please do that. All right. So glad to have you with us today. And I would like to welcome back our listeners. Gosh, the show keeps growing. We're on 6 continents and 32 countries. And the crazy thing is that it's we're all over the place as far as listeners. And so I like to recognize the listeners as they tune in. And so I would like to, and I know I'm going to butcher this, but the listeners in Clichy de France. Okay, so I butchered that for sure. But those listening in France, in fact, it's kind of interesting because France is not a very big English market, but we have a lot of listeners there. So we appreciate you tuning in. You have lots of choices. All right. So got a great guest today. I'm excited to get her on. When I book people, I'm always looking for interesting stories. And success doesn't fall out of the sky. Never does. Now, where I live here, just outside of Boulder in Colorado, we had airplane parts fall out of the sky about 3 blocks from my house after the engine blew up on that United flight. But success is not like that. It doesn't fall out of the sky. It's a journey. Okay. So I hope to show people the human stories, the human experience. All right. So enough of that. We'll get on to the show. I want to introduce this guest. She's an author. Okay. And another thing about her too, she's a survivor. She's got a big story we're going to talk about. She's a speaker. Very interesting too. She's a figure competitor. So first of that on the show. And she's got a great title as a stepmom. Mom, if you have the title of mom in your repertoire as a woman, that's always great. She's a sponsor for people who are in recovery. So she's got a long journey around that. We'll talk about some of that. She's a mentor, helps a lot of people in that space. And then I was teasing her about this. She's an escapee of the Midwest. She's no longer in the Midwest. She's down in Texas. So glad to have that. And then also a femdom. So I'd like to welcome to the show, and this is unique, just like Madonna, a single name, Jules. So Jules, welcome in today.
Hi, Rex. It's good to be here.
Yeah. Now you're dialing in from Dallas, Texas, I understand.
Yes, I am.
Fantastic. Has it been hot down there this summer?
It's been wickedly hot. Yes.
Yeah.
It's Texas and it's summer in Texas.
Yeah, summer in Texas. I can remember I was a mountain bike aficionado when I lived down there. I spent 2 years down in Texas and Dallas, and I always wanted to go ride my mountain bike, but there was no place to ride it. So I would ride on the farm roads and get chased by dogs in the north of Dallas. And so I was suffering. It was so hot. And then I'd get out there and I'd have some dog chase me down the road. And it's like, this isn't mountain biking. Anyway, I digress. So we want to tell your story. And so we are all products of our experiences and our environment and the things that have happened to us and the choices we make. So I want to go back in time, and we want to understand several things like where you're born, where you were raised. I had a guest on the show, Ellie Soja, daughter of an international con man, and she moved 63 times before she was age 15. So she had a really interesting perspective on the world. We want to understand about your family, dynamics there, what your parents did for a living and those types of things. And then I know there's some really rough spots in your growing up because we talked about that coming on. So we want to share some of those things. Want to know what you did as a kid for interests. So, when you weren't in school, how did you spend your time? What you're interested in, whether it's sports, dance, theater, shoplifting. I actually had a guy on the show by the age of 15. He was a car thief. So that's an interesting way to spend his time. Want to know about your school and those types of things. And then we'll hopscotch up to the future about what you're doing today, your book, your speaking, how you're helping people, because I think that our listeners are going to really enjoy an amazing story. So if you could, Jules, can you take us back to where you were born?
Yeah. Gosh, there were so many great questions there. I'll try to
Don't worry
incorporate
about
some
those.
of those.
Don't worry, I will feed them to you. And I have
Okay,
a
that's
few more I
fantastic.
didn't even throw out. Okay, so I've got some trick questions right up my sleeve here.
Okay,
So
good, because I didn't take notes.
no, don't
Okay.
take notes. This is off the cuff conversation. We're just having fun. So where were you born?
I was born in the Midwest. I was born in a small city in Wisconsin, actually.
Ah, cheese country.
Yes, yes, home of the cheese curd.
Okay.
Ever had him?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
So in that area, it's very much German and Norwegian.
Right.
And so drinking is just part of the culture.
Sure.
And so it never stuck out. All of my family members drank. My mom, not in particularly, but all of my uncles, my father, it was just the normal thing to do.
Okay.
And so when I was born into a single family, it was just my mom and my dad. And at the time, my mom was working at a insurance agency. So very, very probably minimum wage. She wore uniforms that matched all the other women in the office.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. And my father was a struggling alcoholic, and he had a small business of a gravel yard.
Okay.
It doesn't sound real, thrilling, but apparently there was a lot of construction going on and concrete and those sorts of things. So, but again, he was struggling. He did not do well. He came from a really bad upbringing, not educated, and so he was a laborer. So,
okay. So I was going to ask you real quick: was your grandfather an alcoholic also?
On my mom's side,
On your
yes.
mom's side.
My
So there
dad
were
didn't know his parents.
genes on both sides for dealing with it. Okay, fantastic.
Yes, yes. And I believe that it's hereditary.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
If it's not environmentally, it's definitely.
Yeah, I think
hereditary.
my opinion on that is people can be predisposed from the genetics, and then it's the matter of, do they get exposed to it, and then does it take off? So
exactly.
Again, but I'm not a therapist, so don't listen to me. All right. So what did you do when you weren't in school growing up? What were the things that kept you busy? So like sports or anything like that, or dance, theater?
No, we left the first family. My father, on one of his drinking nights, came home, and he was in a rage, and he moved forward with an attempt of a family suicide.
Oh my goodness.
And so that's in the book, and it's a great way to kind of set the stage of the platform that, what life became after that. My mom taught me how to run, and we literally ran for our lives. And so, fast forward, maybe even 6 months after that event, again, my mom now is a single parent. Right. She's in the Midwest. She's not very well educated. The only source of survival for us is for her to get remarried. So that's exactly what she did. And so she remarried into a larger family where I became one of 5 kids.
Wow.
And I got lost. Yeah. So, but there was one brother who was close to my age. And so the two of us were just, thick as thieves, I guess you could say. We were always up to something. He was my buddy. It was great to have a brother, because I didn't have that in the previous family. But unbeknownst to us at the time, that family was very, very incestuous. It's the sexual abuse in the family went way back to the grandparents.
Wow.
And so,
so I want to stop you there for a second and go back to the attempted family suicide. Were you or your mother injured in that attempt, or were you able to flee without injury?
Neither of us were harmed. No. And the thing is, my father adored me. He adored me. So it was not that he was angry at us. He was just at his limits. He couldn't do it anymore. And he knew that he couldn't leave us behind.
So he was breaking down and taking everybody with it.
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay. So now you hopscotch over to this other family, and there is a history of sexual abuse. Did you fall victim to any of that in that new family?
Even before they got married. Yeah. Yep. I
goodness.
had he was probably about 16, 15, 16 at the time. And that started, I think, when my mom and soon to be stepfather started to date. He was the babysitter. And so that went on probably, I want to say 5, 6 years.
So, I mean, not to get too personal and understanding, because these are painful things to talk about, but were you fully raped, or was it just other types of sexual abuse? I mean,
You
how
know,
deep, how far did it go?
there was always sexual innuendos when my mom was not present, which was very interesting. And we lived in a trailer. So the parents lived in the front part of the trailer and the kids lived in the back part of the trailer.
Oh my.
So the visual you have, I'm sure, is very accurate. And so what would happen is every morning when we would get ready for school, my parents, they would have to go off to work. So then the older siblings became the adults who then took care of us, got us ready, just like a typical household. But every morning while my sister was in the shower, the other older sibling, my stepbrother then would have me come into his room.
Mm.
And so it was an every morning thing. This is where I learned about disassociation.
Okay.
And I believe now it's something that the body does because it cannot sustain that sort of trauma. And so it's almost like, in a sense, like a blackout. But what happens is anytime I look back on a particular scenario that took place, I never see it through my eyes. So in other words, I'm not looking at this person on top of me.
Right.
Instead, I'm overlooking the room.
Oh, so like a third observer from above.
Yes. And then I learned that's very common for children of abuse. So that's the way a lot of my memories are the over the room type of view, which I thought that was really interesting because again, with disassociation, there are so many missing pieces. Like you try to put together, a childhood, and
so how old were you when this started?
Well, we left my father's 6, so probably 7, between 6 and 7 years old. Yeah.
Oh man,
big family.
I mean, that's having your childhood stolen from you.
Yeah,
it really is, because this is the way people are. When we have trauma, we block it out, just as you were mentioning.
Yeah.
And so when you have that kind of event and abuse going on a daily basis for 5 years, and you got to go to school, or go to other functions, I don't even know how you could have coped with that. I mean,
we picked up the bus every morning. And I remember in the first class, they gave you a little snack, a breakfast snack. And I remember I could not wait to have my milk and, whatever cookies so I could get that taste out of my mouth. I remember that as a child. And today I don't really drink milk, actually.
I was going to ask, I'm not playing therapist here, but,
No.
a couple of weeks back, I was asked about going through, because I'm in therapy. I always do. It's part of a good thing in human life. That's how we deal with there. And the therapist asked me about triggering events or smells. And I hadn't thought of that, because I too had some physical abuse from my father. He had a horrible temper. And there were 3 things that I can remember when I smell them today that trigger those memories. One is horses, because my dad used to have a horse business where he shod horses, and my job was to hold the horse and make sure the horse was, staying still. And if that didn't happen, I got a lashing out of that. So the smell of hay and horses. Poof. Another one is grease guns, like we had out at the ranch, and that grease has that particular smell. And there were incidents going around that. And then the last one is the smell of leather, wet leather, because his tool of abuse was a belt. And so if I smell those things today, there. And then the last one, my dad was always doing something because he was a highway patrolman, and he had a tree business. He had, cutting trees. He had the horse shotting business. He did all kinds of odd jobs just to help, the family. We cut trees all the time. And today, the smell of a chainsaw running and the fresh wood chips, man, I want to stay away from that. So
Wow.
I can imagine that you have some of those types of triggers from those experiences. I mean, I can't even imagine daily abuse. That's horrible.
And it was so new and so foreign.
Yeah.
It's like I said, my father adored me. So then to go into this arena where I was not even physically part of the family unit anymore, and now there's this new set of rules and it feels not right. And I mean, I just emotionally just shut down.
Wow.
And all those, like the barriers, I remember I just became so small.
Yeah.
If I could just stay out of the limelight, I won't be picked on.
Okay.
Yeah.
So were you a good student? I mean, did you go to school?
Oh, no.
Okay. So you were just a mess, right?
I struggled. I ended up dropping out when I was in 9th grade, actually.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. So all this abuse is going on. You're just trying to survive it. I'm imagining you were probably frequently looking for safe harbors wherever you could find them. Like you said, not being in the limelight so people could find you. Were there any type of safe harbors that you were looking for?
My parents...
Or did you find?
My parents didn't, and I think this is common of alcoholic families, like what happens on the inside is completely different than what it looks like from the outside.
Oh, yeah.
And so we weren't allowed to go to friend's house, or so we were very regimented. And so really my escape would be going to bed early and just pretending like I was sleeping. Whatever it was, I was alone, it was dark, and I was safe. Yeah.
When I interview people, I've interviewed hundreds of people between my radio and my podcast, my radio career and podcast. I've always thrown people into like 3 different types of buckets. Okay. The first bucket's like the super supportive parents. They were pushing people along, getting obstacles out of the way, cheerleading all the way. So you didn't have that, obviously. Then there was always sort of the non-participatory parents where they loved their kids, but they were so busy eking out a living that that they just were not as engaged as kids really want and need. And then the last one I call the struggle bucket, which you lived in a horrible fashion, is where there's abuse, where there's addiction, where there is not only verbal abuse, but sexual abuse or extreme poverty. And then it's, when you get someone who's had a combination of any of those, it's a toxic growing up. And a lot of times it drives people to say, hey, I don't want anything like that.
Yeah.
So.
And there was a part in my life where I was ready to just step out of everything.
Okay.
That's definitely part of my story as well.
Okay. So did you ever attempt suicide along the way?
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Oh, yes. And that wasn't until I was probably 25.
Okay. Wow.
Definitely a warrior. And I never gave up.
When you dropped out of school, being in a drinking culture up there in Wisconsin, 9th grade, were you using alcohol or drugs at that time?
I actually have a picture of me in my high chair it actually had a metal tray.
Oh yeah, I remember those.
Yes, and my uncle is there.
The clamps on the side, and you slide them in and out. Yeah.
Yes, and the kids would slam their hands. Yes, exactly. So there's the picture, and my uncle is there with an old Milwaukee, the recyclable type of glass bottle of beer, and inside my bottle is beer.
Oh my goodness.
So alcohol has always been present. This is back when they would say, oh, if the child is crying, give them, rub it on their gum, like the whatever Scotch whiskey or God knows what. But
give them a shot of whiskey if they're whining. Yeah.
That is right. How did we ever survive this?
Well, but think about this. We're similar in age. I'm in my early 50s, and I'll claim that. Back then, we weren't in bubble wrap. We didn't live in bubble wrap. Okay. Nobody wore a helmet anywhere. My dad, even being a highway patrolman, he cut the seat belts out of the back seat because everybody was complaining about sitting on it. All right. You rode around in the back of a pickup, in the bed. You sat on the side. You drank out of a water hose. You rode a skateboard without knee pads and all this elbow pads and stuff. And somehow we survived. A
Yes.
car seat. What was that? You throw them in the back with your brothers and sisters,
And the dog.
And the
Yes.
dog. Yeah. We used to have this old green Ford station wagon, and it had the back seat. And then in the back, it had these jumper seats that folded up.
Okay.
And you could go, and that was a big thing to sit in those jumper seats. And if you explain that to somebody today in our bubble wrap world, they would freak out. The fact that you were sitting in the back like that, where you could get hit. Oh gosh. So no, that was the day. And so people had a different mentality of, if it doesn't kill them, they'll be all right.
Fine. Yes.
Oh my. So when you dropped out of school, did you run away from home? I mean, what happened at that pivot point?
So at this point, the second marriage has ended.
Okay.
I came out about the abuse that had taken place.
Okay.
At let's see, it was probably, we must have been like junior high days, right around that, the summer.
Yeah.
And so when that came out, the authorities were involved.
Okay. So legal action took place.
Yes. And so I was taken out of the home.
Okay.
And so then I stayed with a friend for a few months while my mom went through with the proceedings of the divorce. So we all moved back to the Midwest because that's where everybody was, where all the family roots were. So now there's another son between them that has been born. And so all of us go back because he also wants to have visitations for his son.
Okay.
So,
oh my, yours, mine, and ours, huh?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, this is like family tree that you kind of have to draw out to figure it out. But so here I am. I'm a girl who has sexual abuse issues. I have rage coming in now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting to be a bit of an outcast, promiscuous. And I come into a small town in Wisconsin. The counselor, when they met with me on the first quarter or semester, whatever it would have been, he said to me, Jules, I don't think you're going to be very successful here. And literally gave me the green light to drop out.
Really?
And of course, I was out of there. Absolutely. It was terrible. And so it's almost like I was outgrowing who I was. Like I was not innocent enough to be in high school. It's like I have adult techniques and behaviors now.
Mm-hmm.
So when my mom got wind of this, of course, there's partying going on at the house. And she's like, I can't do this. She's now a single parent, with 2 kids, a deadbeat dad. She's like, I can't. You either A, go back and live with your dad, or B, go to a foster home. Of course, I went back to my dad's. I'm not going back. I'm not going to the foster home.
Right. Oh my goodness. From the frying pan to the fire then, huh?
Exactly. Because he was also one of my abusers. Because again, this is the household we grew up in. So then,
okay, so let me stop you there for a second.
I don't have to deal with all of this.
Was he physical or was it sexual? What was the abuse that your father?
Yes, my stepfather, of course, the innuendos, the verbal all the time. And then, yes, the physical sexual abuse as well. And that was, my mom would be out of the house on her second job. And so he took that opportunity to do. So then after I got the green light, I moved in with my stepfather. And I mean, it was only a matter of time where he said, your mom's not paying child support and I can't afford to feed you. Can you get a part-time job?
Oh my goodness.
And so I was like, well, I got a part-time job. And then of course I'm thinking to myself, why am I living with this guy if I can do this on my own?
Right.
So I started working full-time at an A&W root beer store.
Oh yeah, I remember those.
Yes. And
now, did you have to have roller skates on those? Or
no, I didn't have that glamorous job. I was in the back as a cook.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but if people haven't had that, A&W had the best root beer. Oh my goodness.
With the ice cream.
Yes. And it
Yes.
wasn't overly fizzy. It was like a syrup. I mean, yeah,
It's
there
total
are,
sugar.
yeah, it's just total sugar and color and that, but there are still places. In fact, I can think of one not far from my house where they still have the A&W combined with the Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Oh
And I
gosh.
will go there only so I can have a small cup of the root beer because
Okay.
that's a memory. I mean, we had several of those where I grew up, and that's what you, in my mind, that's what you went to A&W for, is to get that root beer.
Absolutely. There's
Yeah,
no other reason.
no,
Yes.
it wasn't for the food.
No, that was gross. Yes, the
Yeah.
greasy. So,
So
so I
you're
pretty
working on
much,
your own, okay?
yeah,
Working for A&W.
I started working full time. And, again, I'm very adamant. I'm very resistant to a lot of things at this stage. And so then I told my stepfather to pretty much, screw off. And I moved in with one of my friends.
Okay.
And that was where it all started. I was now on my own, making my own money. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't need anybody.
Okay.
And so now I'm starting to taste a little freedom, but unfortunately, I wasn't mature enough to know what to do with that.
Right.
Right. So, and I'm active now in my both drug and alcohol addiction.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Mhm, mhm.
So let's explore for a couple minutes. What were your relationships like with men at this time? I mean, if you're on your own, you got your money, you're living this lifestyle, drugs and alcohol. What
Mhm.
type of relationships did you have? Did you continue this train wreck that your mom had, or what was that like? Because I mean, obviously the abuse had to make things very difficult for you.
Oh, yes. I didn't even know what trust was. I
Okay.
didn't know what intimacy was. I mean, it's
Right.
like trying to tell somebody, a blind person what a banana tastes like. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't know if you don't. And so my relationships, I was very much dominant.
Okay.
I was dominant, and it was a very physical relationship. That was my, we'll say, currency that got me from, place to place where I needed to be. I wasn't looking necessarily to be, saved,
Right.
and that is really the opposite that I was looking for. I was looking for a stable place that I could stay long enough that I could get my feet underneath me.
Okay.
That's it. I didn't want, again, I didn't want anybody else. I just wanted to be alone.
Wow. So did you pop around from relationships? I mean, obviously young women, young men. I mean,
Oh
so
yeah.
was it just a string of young men that you were,
Men
being
and
with?
women.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. After a while, you get pretty tired of that caliber of man,
Yeah.
and so, I'm bisexual. And so it was just, I just shut that door altogether and then just stayed in a whole different environment, a whole different arena.
Okay.
One of the skills, I guess we could say, I acquired during this was I can chameleonize.
Okay.
That is a tool that I had to learn to do, because ultimately, if I wanted a roof over my head and food in my mouth, I needed to be what they needed me to be.
Okay. I see.
And I don't have much of an identity anyway at this point.
Sure.
So it was very easy for me just to slide right into that position.
Let me ask you a very controversial question because I don't have an answer to it. But you were in this horrible environment. You were good at being a chameleon. There are people who believe that bisexual or being LGBTQ is a born trait. Then there are people who feel that it's experience and environmentally, driven and those types of things. Looking back in those years, do you have an opinion on that? Were those feelings there for both sides, or was it just, hey, I wouldn't say using people, but I'm using this currency, as you said, to
Mhm.
keep yourself stable. So do you have an opinion on those sways or in that direction? I'm not trying to start conflict.
Yeah.
I don't
Oh,
know. I don't have an answer.
no. And it, first off, my first thought is like, well, who cares?
Yeah.
but honestly, for me personally, it's still active in my life today. So
Okay.
if it was a survival tool that I used back then,
Mm-hmm.
it's something I still enjoy today.
Okay.
Even in the open marriage I have now, I have a girlfriend.
Okay.
So this has been who I am all along. But of course, growing up, that wasn't back in those days, of course, that
Yeah.
wasn't allowed.
Huh. Okay. Fascinating. I
Mhm.
mean, I knew this was going to be an interesting story. Okay. So you went along being the chameleon, those types of things. Did you just mainly do low end jobs? I mean, did you find a career? Did you find a purpose? I mean, what did that look
Yeah.
like?
There was something in me. My mom always told me knowledge is power.
Sure.
And so after I dropped out in ninth grade, I immediately went to the community college and started working on my GED.
Nice.
Went on and got my HSED, which is kind of the high school equivalent of that. And I scored really well, which was really shocking from the experiences I had with, the other schooling I'd had. And so I applied for a community college and I got that welcome letter. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, if I can educate myself, I don't have to have all these people. Remember, I don't
Right.
have to
Right.
rely on anybody. There's that independence I need.
Right. So you
And
rose above
so,
all that, huh?
yeah. And so I continued through the throes of alcoholism, through these crazy relationships, drug infested relationships. I would go to school during the day.
Mm-hmm.
So when fast forward, I have 7 transcripts because everywhere I would move to find that new platform,
Mm-hmm.
I would enroll in school, and I actually worked in healthcare.
Wow. Okay.
Yes. They do say alcoholics live 2 lives.
Okay.
And we do. We are very, very successful. And I think because we have to have those 2 lives, we're type A personality in a lot of areas.
Right.
But then when you get into the emotional and the family, and I'm a mess. I mean, I had nothing there.
Right.
But I was very good in my line of work.
Okay. Wow. Fascinating. So you worked in how long were you in healthcare?
About 25 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So this wasn't a casual, this was a career, other kinds of
Yeah.
stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
So now when did you decide to write your book?
Oh, gosh. Well, that was much further along.
Okay.
But actually, the seed was planted when I was in a college course of a women's studies college course. And the topic was how girls fall in the cracks of the educational system.
Okay.
As I sat in this class, I am pretty much thinking this is my life.
Right.
They had all of the precursors and during that time, I would share. And so I'd met friends in that particular class who then stayed along with me on my journey.
Okay.
And then started to plant that seed like, girl, you need to write a book. And it's like, I'm fine. And then I finally, how many years later, started to piece things together.
Okay.
So like I said, there's blackouts. I had to go back through my taxes to remember where I lived, who I was living with, what job I had, so I could piece together these 19 years of drinking and drugging.
Okay. Okay. So we fast forwarded a little bit there. We hopped over some stuff. How when did you step away from it? When was where you finally, what was the event or series of events where you just said, okay, I've got to get clean?
Some people refer that to as their bottom. They hit bottom.
Yeah.
I bounced on the bottom, I think about 3 times.
Wow.
3 times. One of them was that attempted suicide. And it was like I would get that shaking of like, oh my God, something's got to change. But then there's a little seed of hope that, well, maybe if I did it differently. So, but the final part was I was in the back seat of, we'll say like a Blazer, it's kind of an SUV. And I had mentioned to the 2 people in the front who were friends of the lady I was dating at the time. And I said, I just wish I didn't drink so much. It was a nonchalant comment. It was nothing. Those 2 people in the front seat were both in recovery, and their little ears went up like antennas. It was like And I'm not kidding. It was less than 30 minutes. And I was sitting in the rooms of recovery on my first day of being sober. And once I went in there, first off, it's like, these are not my people. Right. They are smoking, they cough, it's like, these are not my peeps. But I sat down, and when, they said, is there anybody new here? My heart like just kind of cracked.
Okay.
And I just started crying and crying. And I don't think I stopped crying until the end of that meeting. And I knew then, no matter what, I was never going back.
Never going back.
I was never going back. And so then, as I moved forward, found a meeting that was closer to my home. It was the women who gave me the hug when I walked in the door and said, welcome, yeah. Jules. Wow. Because I was a mess. I was very angry. And now I don't have the drugs or alcohol to numb that out.
Okay.
So for those 9 months, got a little guy here, these 9 months, I would come in there raging. I was inappropriate. I was detoxing. I was getting sober. Okay. And like I said, I didn't have the luxuries of going to a treatment and doing that all behind closed doors. Okay. I went to that meeting every night at 7:00, and I continued to do that probably up until the 9th month is when I finally asked somebody for some help.
Yeah. So how long have you been sober?
I'm sober for 14 years now.
Oh, fantastic. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now I have to go here just because but we're doing this on video. So those watching on YouTube, you get the luxury of this. Those that are just listening, you're going to have to go to YouTube because when did you get into fitness? Because girl, you've got some traps and some guns.
Do you see those girls? Look at that.
Yeah.
Boom.
Look at those guns. And when you're talking girls, you're not talking about what most women say. You got some. Look at that, you've got some guns up there.
Yes, yeah. yes.
So, and then your traps, I'm not sure I've seen traps on anybody like you. Yeah, I've been around a lot of bodybuilder people in my life. My grade school and high school friend is Bill Phillips, one of the early big pioneers, EAS, and hang in there, Bill. He's in ICU right now, battling COVID, having a rough time. But anyway, when I see somebody who has traps like you do and guns, I'm like, there's somebody that knows how to work out because that takes work.
I do have that discipline.
And not only work in the gym, but also work at the table. The worst lift you can do is the forklifts, right? I mean, that's the worst one. So when did you get into fitness?
You know what? It was when I turned 40 years old.
Okay.
So before that, I was just like every other woman, at least in my circle. We were doing fad diets. We were doing cardio like till hours on end, it seemed like. And I was that skinny fat type of girl, right? I look at pictures and it's like, yeah, I didn't look bad. I never struggled with weight.
Right.
But I didn't like the way my thighs looked.
Okay.
And so I hired a personal trainer and then, got some results. And then I took this huge plunge and I look at the pictures today. Rex, there's got to be like a tint of green to my face because you have to do before pictures.
Oh, yeah,
course,
sure.
Right. And so she says, show up in a 2-piece bikini and we'll take some pictures. And I have never worn a 2-piece bikini. At age 40, I've never worn because I have this really distorted body image.
Sure.
And so, but I wanted it bad. I was so tired of being tired. I was tired of all of the mental chatter that goes on.
Yeah.
When you're obsessed with something that you don't like. And so I went in, I hired a trainer who was an IFBB pro.
Okay.
And I did everything she said. For a full year, I didn't get off that meal plan. Wow. I did not have a cheat meal. I drank my gallon of water every day. I was committed. So fast forward, I think it was probably my year 3.
Okay.
I did my first my first bodybuilding competition.
Nice.
Yes, and now I am 4 weeks out. I qualified for nationals last year,
Oh,
and
congratulations.
so thank you. In 4 weeks now, I will go and attempt to get my pro card in figure.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Figure. Okay.
yeah.
No, I have so much admiration because I, have friends that the Phillips brothers, both Sean and Bill, just completely immersed in that stuff, and it's a super discipline. And
Mhm.
I think the biggest problem a lot of people have, and I would have it. I bulk up very quickly. I was a football player and all kinds of stuff, and I was actually Bill's lifting partner in junior high and high school. But you have to be really disciplined to get to that level, to be able to do that. And it's work, and very few people, I would say, have that level of discipline.
There's a lot of stress that you can leave in the gym.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of mental health for me as well, especially getting sober. I got sober when I was 35. I'm dropped in the middle of nowhere trying to figure out the norms and how do I do this. So going to the gym, I mean, you pack on the plates and I'll move that, and so I left a lot of that junk in the gym. So it was very therapeutic.
Oh, I 100% agree. When you're in the gym and you've got your music on and you're pushing hard and you're trying to eke out a next couple of reps and that maximum exertion, and then you get up from that, so it's a bench or something or a squat. And when you finish, there is just that rush that you get. And I like to tell people, when I was really serious at doing that stuff, which I need to get back to it, man, there's no escape better than the gym. It's just awesome.
And when I worked an 8 to 5, I would train in the morning. So no matter what hit me further along during that day, it was nothing compared to what I did in the gym that morning. Right. So it was like, is that really, this is not going to upset me. And I did something a lot harder and more intense in the gym that morning. So it was definitely a coping tool. It was really good for stress.
So I want to go back for just a second and just ask a question from sort of personal reflection. That discipline that you've been successful and in applying in the gym and the fitness and the competing and stuff, do you look back on your journey to get sober? Did you have that same sort of discipline, or did you develop that discipline when you got into lifting?
My mom
it takes discipline to get sober.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah.
I always say, it may look simple,
no.
But it's not easy. No. It's not for the weak. No. Absolutely not. My mom was a very type A personality. Okay. So she was very regimented. And so I was raised in that. Okay. And then of course, as in the second marriage as well. And I think that when I finally was able to lock into good direction, then I was always searching for the way to apply myself. Right. And that's where I always spun out, because I was around the wrong people. So, when I was, I was working full-time during the day, and then, drinking and whatnot at night. I mean, I never missed a day. That integrity was always there, that drive, that, the grind, as we call it. Right. And I think also that now today, a schedule for me is so much more comfortable because I know what to expect. Right. Back in the earlier days, I didn't know what to expect. I had no control. So it actually gives you a sense of comfort to have an order, or an orderly home, or organizing those sorts of things. It gives me a sense of comfort as an adult, which might not make sense, but
okay. So we're going to circle back around because I'm crazy. My thoughts are going everywhere.
Okay.
Questions. Back to your book. Okay.
Yeah.
When did you start actually sit down and putting thought to paper and organizing this and getting it put together?
January of this year.
Really?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Now it's finished, right, and published.
Oh, yes. Oh,
Okay.
yes.
So,
She's in pre-sales right now.
oh, fantastic. So where can people get it? Is in the normal places? It is on your website. Give us out your information too.
Yes. So it is on the website, themakingofawoman.com.
Okay.
I have an awesome book trailer on there, which is really cool. It's a video like a movie trailer,
Oh, nice.
but about the book. Of course, you can get it at Amazon. Through the website itself, you'll be able to purchase it. Right now, we just have digital copies that are available pre-sale. Or better yet, you can get those now. And then the hardcover and softcover are on pre-sale until she launches October 5th.
Fantastic. Okay.
Yeah.
So give us an overview of the book. Well, what was your intention and what message are you trying to get out to the reader?
First off is that you're not the only one.
Yeah.
I think going through any sort of trauma, I think I'm the only person, and how in God's name am I ever going to try to explain this to somebody without them thinking I'm crazy? Yeah. So the reason the book is as raw and as real is because I'm not sugarcoating it for the general public.
Okay.
It's the rawness of what it felt like. Because as humans, we connect when we can relate or emphasize.
Oh, you're right. Oh my goodness.
Right. So
I teach that in marketing is if you can interrupt somebody and then you can validate the problem, you now have a friend. It's not selling you anything more. So that, and the crazy thing is we all live in this odd perception that everybody else has a perfect life. Okay. Now I've been in church circles and leadership in church circles, and you realize that everybody lives in these elements of dysfunction. It's everywhere. So the people you think are the happiest, Mayberry lifestyles, that ain't true. So, everybody has fun and dysfunction. That's just what it is. So, so you're validating and helping people understand that you're not alone. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And then as I'm getting sober, I'm also showing the rawness of that.
Okay.
When I got into the rooms of recovery, I did not fit that mold either. They used the word God in there.
Yeah.
And the last thing I wanted to do was surrender or tell me my life is unmanageable. Are you kidding me? Do you not know what I've just survived? My life is very manageable, so I had to kind of, dismantle all of that and find my meaning to be able to work those steps.
Right.
Right. And then the best part is, of course, is as I get some momentum after doing that, this amazing connection I have with Source.
Okay.
And I find that I learned how to do that first by just sitting in stillness. Oh my gosh, when's the last time you could sit, eyes closed, not move for 2 minutes?
Yeah.
It's very hard. And with an alcoholic mind that is chattering and busy and it is extremely difficult. I think they teach us to start at like 15 seconds.
The best class I've ever taken in any kind of professional personal development. I took a 6-week class here local, and it was just on coping with stress for mindfulness and just being mindful and practicing the whole thing to just sit still, breathe, listen to your breathing, listen to your environment, and just, and it's amazing what you hear that you just tune out and that kind of stuff. Or going on a walk and observing the flowers and looking at the weeds and just things like that are just being in the moment. And that really changed my perception on stress, because it's like, we let so many things get us riled up. And so did you do some study on mindfulness and those types of things, or what was your journey to be able to sit still for 2 minutes and close your eyes?
The first thing I had to do is figure out what this Source thing was.
Okay.
Right. And coming from where I came from, I didn't see Source anywhere.
Yeah, right.
So, I'm sitting in these rooms, I'm listening to people talk about this. I mean, we're in Texas, I'm in the Bible Belt, there's a lot of this, and I'm like, a lot of
God squad down there, right?
Stop this.
Yeah, right.
And again, I had to create that authentic program for myself as well. And so there was a time when you first get sober, you have kind of the moment you just spoke of, is like you taste food again.
Yeah.
You're present, you're not blacking out. You're not drunk, you're realizing that there is a long 24 hours in one day.
Right. Right.
So you have this whole new existence. And so my body's like becoming alive, and coming outside of one of those meetings, Texas heat, it's very warm. There was a breeze, and it was almost like it wrapped around me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was this moment of that source. I thought of that breeze wrapping around me and giving me a hug.
Nice.
So by taking that little experience and then moving forward, right? So I can actually, because seriously, I don't know who else can make wind. It's gotta be a divine thing.
Right.
So that was tangible. Not what somebody wrote in a book. This is something I actually experienced myself. And so then as I moved forward and have that insight, I started to realize there are things that came into my path along the way. So for instance, I was flipping through a yoga journal.
Mm-hmm.
In there, I saw Deepak Chopra. I've always had his books on my shelf. We would get them from the Goodwill, the thrift stores and stuff. And so I was like, oh my gosh. And it was a 21-day meditation challenge.
Okay.
All you do is you sign up for it. Every morning they would put an MP3 in your email, and you put your buds in and you listen to it for 21 days.
Nice.
I fell in love. I mean, my gosh, it told me things like, you're a good person, and what's your purpose? And I was like, oh my God, this is just so heartfelt.
Right.
And that's where the healing started to take place. Okay. And then, you find other types of, meditation. I've done, just sitting in stillness. That's wonderful to do next to the ocean.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And there's times where I'm sitting outside the gym. I just get done with that crazy traffic, and I got to go in there, and I will just turn everything off and then just breathe. Yeah. Just we're going to hit the reset button. It becomes just a regular tool you use.
I look back over time, and this is my weird observation. If we were born 100 or 150 years ago, for us in the United States, the main thought you would have is getting enough food to eat that day. Yeah. I mean, that's just what it is. You didn't have all this complexities and stuff. Simple things like a little fire, or, the smell of a rain, or those types of things meant so much to those people because life was so simple. Yeah. And I think we get into this trap in modern society here in the United States. We're spoiled rotten compared to, many parts of the world. And we just get absorbed by all these distractions and things that really don't mean anything. Yeah. And so I really appreciate when people have gone on a journey and then be able to find that mindfulness and being present and being able to observe, because, there's so much good in the world, there just is. But there's so many people that just spend their time looking for the yuck. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you came from an environment of yuck. I mean, I did. Drugs, alcohol, abuse, basically on the run for like 15 years, trying to find yourself and being this chameleon. I mean, it's an incredible journey. Yeah. So what's next? What do you got next on the horizon? The book's coming out. What are you going to do next? Well, after this competition, I'm going to have a cheeseburger.
Cheeseburger and cheesecake, huh? Oh my gosh. I'm telling you, like bacon on a burger sounds so divine now.
That's right. Yeah. How many pounds of chicken breast can you eat, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm over chicken.
Yeah.
What's now forming is amongst like the open lifestyle, the open marriage lifestyle, is I'm starting to see how trauma affects the women in that lifestyle. And I'm seeing that there are maybe one or two sources that actually talk about it. Right. So, and this is something that I've been married now for 7 years. And so this is something that's very apparent in my life. Right. But I don't have anybody to really, to chat about with this. So I have a feeling that there might be something in that vein that I'll be able to do some work in that area.
Okay. Now you mentioned when we getting on the air here that you do some mentoring. What's that look like today?
Mentoring. It's the most, they say the one who gives the gift is really receiving the gift, right?
Yeah, right.
It's amazing. I meet with people who we live completely different lives.
Sure.
At this point, in Texas, of course, being in this very conservative state, living authentically for some folks is totally forbidden.
Sure.
And so a lot of those folks turn to drugs and alcohol and prostitution because where else do you go? Talk about being abandoned.
Right.
And so I'm fortunate that I get to work with these people who want a better life. They want to get sober. But how do you do that being authentic in a culture that doesn't support that?
Right.
So, and even though my story isn't in this particular scenario, it has the same underground to it.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Right.
So I have this great ability by sharing my story with these folks to have that immediate connection, right? We talked about emphasizing or empathy.
Yep.
And so you can connect, and then that trust is established almost immediately. Right. And I find that anytime you talk like from the heart, that's automatic. That's what humans want to do. And then this trust is built. And then I get to show them, step by step, month by month, year by year, what it's like to live authentically in a society that does not live authentically.
No. I laugh at social media because everybody puts up this perfect life and it's not anywhere near that, Oh, no. And I always laugh at the people who put their vacation pictures up and stuff like that. And I chuckle and I'll post on there. Well, I'm glad you're in Honolulu because now I can go clean out your house. So
yes.
But things are never all that perfect. So that's great. So do you have another book in you?
Yes. And I think that's going to be part of the lifestyle.
Okay.
I think once I start looking into that and it's awesome because when I talk with people, that's when the ideas become present.
Okay.
Right. So I think that's where I'm going to be meandering next.
Cool. So have you thought about delivering some of this mentoring with classes or courses or webinars? Are you headed in that direction? Have you explored that?
There's a saying that I'm on a bicycle with God.
Mm-hmm.
God is steering. I just keep pedaling.
That's right.
So with that, I don't know what that answer is, but I do know that I am open and willing to be of service.
Well, that's great.
Yeah. 10 times, 10-fold. Right?
There's a great saying about service is that when you're in the service of God, and when you're in the service of your fellow man, you're in the service of God, because the Lord, whatever people want to call it, but I'll just say, when God wants he wants miracles to be formed, it's through people that touch their lives. So that's great. Well, I appreciate you coming on today. This has been a fascinating story.
Totally. Yes.
Can't wait to see your book. I'm going to have to go out there and get in line and get one of those. Fantastic. Good luck on you're getting your license and everything and the competition.
Yes, my pro card.
Your pro card. There is a cheeseburger on the horizon somewhere, right?
Yes, I know.
Now, with your pro card, are you going to do some more competitions coming up, or what's the plan?
And again, it's like right now, that is the only thing that's
that's your milestone.
Okay. Yeah, I'm giving it everything I have to get to that stage. So
I have to ask a question, and it doesn't matter, and just it's because it's a bodybuilding thing. How tall are you?
5'7".
Oh my goodness! So you've got to pack it on, to have the symmetry that someone who's 5'4" or 5'2" or something like that.
That's my challenge is not necessarily losing weight. It's keeping the muscle on.
Keeping the muscle. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know enough about that to be dangerous. Like Bill Phillips, he's 5'8", 5'9" on a great day with big shoes. So he has an advantage over someone who's 6'2" or 6'5" because he can look massive at 190, 195, 205 because he's just more compact. But if you're 6'3", 6'4", you got to look like you got to be huge to get the symmetry to look the same as someone who's much shorter. So,
Yes.
man, you are tough. That is amazing. It's 5'7". You got to pack a lot on.
Yes. Yes.
Well, I have one more question for you before we depart in our discussions here today. It's a question I ask all my guests that come on. It's kind of a left-handed question. Now, in the Western cultures, we see this. It's a thing called a bucket list. Okay. Now, I actually have interviewed the bucket list guy, thebucketlistguy.com. His name is Trav Bell. If you get a chance and you want to listen to something fun, go to the episode with Trav Bell. Listen to it. He's amazing. And it's about just living purposeful life. Okay.
Okay.
And he would call you mate, and he's really funny. And it's not really about talking about how to build a bucket list. It's about how being living purposeful. Anyways, I got sidetracked. Now, there's an opposite of everything in life, right? So when there's a push, there's a pull. So there's an opposite list. Okay. And that list is the things we don't want to do. All right. We have no interest in. Now, that list rhymes with bucket, but starts with an F. But I'm not going to say that. So it's the F-it list. Okay. So you've been very transparent in sharing your story. And this tells us a little bit about you too. I'd like to know an item or two that might be on your F-it list. Now, I'll give you some examples for me. Okay. Anybody that knows this, follows the show, they know what's coming. I will never have a collection of pet snakes. This is not going to happen. I'm not a snake person. All right. I'm not eating. I had that chance in college to do some traveling and some fun places. I won't eat any more monkey brains, or I'm not going to have any more sardines or caviar. I don't get those. All right. And then this is the one. I was looking for mindfulness, but it was a horrible experience. And I did an episode on this. I will never, ever again do a Lakota Sioux sweat lodge. Okay. I went there for this mindful connect with the spirit. I mean, all these guys were out there. They were crystal guys and stuff. But here's what happened. It was excessive heat, excessive humidity, claustrophobia, drumming and chanting at as loud as you can get, and a small slice of nudity. And I will never, ever do that again. Okay. It's just, I can get mindful sitting on my front porch. I do not need to go where people are smoking peyote, get into a tent with 30 people and drum and chant. No, it was horrifying. It was horrifying. So with those examples, okay, what might be an item or two that's on your F-it list?
Well, I know I would never run a daycare.
Okay.
That's one of them.
Okay, we got that one. That's a first. That's out of all the episodes I've done, that's the first. Okay.
I'm a rescue scuba diver. Okay. And so I don't think I would dive with great whites in a cage. I don't have that interest.
No, I'm right there with you. I would add that to my list. I have no interest in getting in the ocean with something that could swallow me in one bite.
Exactly. Not even a bite, right?
Yeah.
And bungee jumping or skydiving. No need. No need.
I can think of the skydiving. I haven't done that yet. But I've had friends do it and they got injured and stuff. So it wasn't a very good, this funny story, but bungee jumping, I don't see the value in that. To be just free falling and then going back up and back. No, I'm sorry. I would be, if I did bungee jumping, I'm pretty sure I'd be covered in puke within the first one or two. Because just going up and down. No.
Yeah, no. I have better things to do with my time.
That's right. There are better experiences to get a high.
There are.
Well, you've been a great guest. I really appreciate it. Can't wait to get your book and take a look at that. I'm going to follow you, and we'll get you back on and talk about how things go after you get your book launched and stuff. And so thank you for sharing your story and being so transparent. I just love interesting people doing interesting things. And I don't wish struggle on anybody. I never do. But people who are survivors and have fought through that, there's a special place for them, because people don't understand, if you study the human condition, everybody has some sort of struggle. Okay. It's really true. And some that overcome enormous struggle like you have, they're really shining star stories. And so it's been great to share yours.
Thank you.
All right. So we'll call this a wrap for today's episode. Glad to have everybody with us. Don't forget to stop by Jules' site. Okay. Pop that out one more time, Jules.
www.themakingofawoman.com.
And then also stop by the show site, rexandrewshow.com. We've got all the profiles out there, profile for Jules, links to her sites and social media and all those good things. So follow along. Let's go and see what happens when she gets this pro card. All right. So we'll say the things that I say at the end of every episode. Be safe, but be bold, and make it a great day.